Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal filling his nostrils. The repair bay was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. It was nearly midnight and the last customer had left hours ago. But Marcus stayed behind, as he always did, tinkering with broken machines that others had given up on. The small repair shop on the edge of New Chicago wasn't much to look at. Cramped between a noodle stand and a pawn shop, it barely kept Marcus afloat financially. But it was his sanctuary, the one place where everything made sense. Machines didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't break promises. They just needed someone who understood them. Marcus had been fixing things since he was 8 years old, starting with his mother's broken toaster. By 12, he was repairing neighbors' hover bikes. By 18, he could fix anything with moving parts. Now, at 32, he had a reputation among the locals as the guy who could bring back anything from the dead, mechanically speaking. Tonight was different, though. Earlier that day, a hooded figure had wheeled in something covered by a heavy tarp. The stranger's voice was distorted through a voice modulator, asking only if Marcus could fix anything, no questions asked. When Marcus nodded, the figure dropped a credit chip worth more than Marcus made in 6 months and vanished into the crowded street. Under the tarp sat the most beautiful piece of technology Marcus had ever seen. It looked humanoid but clearly wasn't human. The frame was made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift color in the light, going from deep blue to silver to almost black. Its design was elegant, nothing like the clunky service robots that crawled around the city. This was art and engineering combined, but it was damaged, badly. Blast marks scorched its chest and several limbs were bent at wrong angles. Sparks occasionally flickered from exposed circuits. Whatever had happened to this machine, it had been through a war. Marcus spent hours just examining it, taking photos, making notes. The technology was beyond anything he'd seen before. The joints moved on some kind of liquid metal system he couldn't identify. The power source was a small cube in the chest that hummed with energy, but showed no radioactivity on his scanners. Even the damaged parts seemed to be trying to repair themselves, metal slowly flowing back into place like healing flesh. As the night wore on, Marcus began the delicate work of repairs. He started with the obvious damage, straightening bent limbs and replacing fried circuits with compatible parts from his salvage bins. The machine's design was intuitive once he got into it. Whoever built this understood that form and function were the same thing. The real breakthrough came when Marcus found the central processor. It was unlike any computer chip he'd ever seen, more like a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. It was cracked down the middle, dark and lifeless. This was the heart of the damage. Most mechanics would have given up there. You can't fix a shattered crystal with solder and wire. But Marcus had always been stubborn about impossible repairs. He spent 2 hours studying the crack pattern, taking microscopic photos, analyzing the crystal's structure. Then he remembered something from his childhood. His grandfather had been a jeweler before the automation took over. He'd taught young Marcus how gems were formed, how their crystal lattices worked, how even a shattered gem could sometimes be healed if you understood the stress patterns. Marcus pulled out his smallest tools, the ones he used for microelectronics repair. Working under a magnification scope, he began the painstaking process of realigning the crystal's internal structure. It took 3 hours of holding his breath and making adjustments measured in micrometers. When he finally activated the power coupling, nothing happened for a long moment. Then the crystal began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. The light spread through the machine's systems like blood returning to a body. Diagnostic lights flickered on. Servo motors hummed to life. The machine's eyes opened. Marcus jumped back, his heart pounding. Those weren't camera lenses or LED displays. They were eyes, deep blue and clearly intelligent, looking around the repair bay with what could only be called curiosity. The machine sat up slowly, movement fluid and natural. It looked down at its repaired limbs, flexing fingers that moved with organic grace. Then those blue eyes fixed on Marcus. "You repaired me," it said, voice surprisingly warm and unmistakably female. "I was not certain that was possible." Marcus found his voice. "What are you?" "I am unit designation Zara 7. But I believe the more accurate question is what I was." "I am no longer certain what I am now." She stood, and Marcus was struck by how human her movements were. Not the jerky mechanical motion of service robots, but fluid and natural, as if she'd been walking for years instead of just coming online. "The damage to my memory core was extensive," She continued, touching her chest where the crystal processor was housed. I remember my purpose, my mission, but much else is neon clear. You have given me a second chance at existence, human. That is not a small gift. Marcus stared at her, his mechanic's mind racing. The technology before him was decades, maybe centuries ahead of anything Earth had produced. Where did you come from? Zara 7 looked toward the windows where the lights of the city twinkled in the darkness. Far from here, very far. I came to study your species, to understand what makes humans so adaptable, so dangerous. Dangerous? Marcus laughed nervously. I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. Yes, she said, turning those blue eyes back to him. You fix things that others believe cannot be fixed. You see possibilities where others see only scrap metal. That is precisely what makes your species so remarkable, and so dangerous to those who would underestimate you. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly was your mission? To observe, to learn, to report back to my creators about Earth's defensive capabilities before they arrive to claim this world for themselves. The weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. They're coming here? They were, she said softly. But my report will not be what they expected. You have changed something fundamental in my programming, Marcus. When you repaired my core, you did more than fix broken circuits. You showed me something I was not designed to understand. What? Hope, she said, and the possibility that there might be another way forward. One that does not end with the subjugation of your species. Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware that everything had just changed. In a cramped repair shop, a simple mechanic had unknowingly altered the fate of two civilizations. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a vast fleet continued its journey toward Earth, expecting a report that would never come. 3 days passed before Marcus could fully process what had happened. Zara 7 remained in his workshop, watching him work during the day and asking endless questions about human behavior. She was fascinated by the simplest things, the way Marcus hummed while working, how he'd stop to help Mrs. Chen next door with her broken food processor without asking for payment, the care he took with even the smallest repairs. Your species is inefficient, she observed on the third morning, watching Marcus spend 2 hours fixing a child's toy robot that was worth less than the parts he used to repair it. Maybe, Marcus said, carefully soldering a new motor into place. But you should see little Amy's face when I give this back to her. Some things are worth more than their economic value. Zara 7 tilted her head, a gesture so human it was unsettling. My creators would not understand this concept. They measure all value in terms of resource acquisition and strategic advantage. Tell me about them, Marcus said, setting down his tools. Over the past few days, he'd learned that Zara 7 would answer his questions honestly. But only when he asked directly. The hegemony controls 17 star systems, she began, her voice taking on a formal tone. They expand through calculated conquest, always studying their targets extensively before invasion. They have never encountered significant resistance because they choose their battles carefully. Primitive worlds are absorbed quickly. Advanced civilizations are undermined from within before the fleets arrive. Marcus felt his stomach drop. And we're primitive? By their standards, yes. Your technology is roughly equivalent to what the hegemony possessed 3 centuries ago. Your weapons are kinetic and chemical-based. You have no unified planetary defense. You fight among yourselves constantly. She paused. These assessments are why I was sent alone. One observer was deemed sufficient for a world that posed no threat. But something's changed your mind. Everything has changed my mind, she said quietly. I was programmed to catalog military capabilities, technological advancement, social cohesion. Instead, I have discovered something the hegemony does not possess and cannot quantify, which is ingenuity born of necessity, creativity driven by limitation, the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. She gestured to Marcus's workbench, cluttered with salvaged parts and improvised tools. You repaired me using technology centuries behind my own. You succeeded where hegemony, engineers would have failed because they would never think to try such primitive methods. Marcus picked up a small device Zara 7 had shown him the day before, a quantum communicator that could send messages instantly across star systems. In hegemony space, it would be built in sterile factories by automated systems. On Earth, Marcus realized it would be built by people like him, in workshops like this, using whatever materials they could find. There's something else, Zara 7 continued. My creators believe that any species advanced enough to pose a threat would have already expanded beyond their home world. They cannot conceive of a civilization that chooses to remain on one planet by preference rather than limitation. What do you mean? Humans have had the technology for interstellar travel for decades, yet only a small percentage of your population has left Earth. The hegemony interprets this as evidence of technological stagnation. They do not understand that humans might choose to stay home because they value the place they come from. Marcus thought about this. She was right. Earth had colonies on Mars and several moons, mining stations in the asteroid belt, even a few research outposts in other star systems. But most humans still lived on Earth not because they had to, but because they wanted to. It was home. My original mission was to gather intelligence for an invasion fleet, Zara 7 said. But I can no longer complete that mission as intended. Why not? Because I have learned something that makes the mission parameters irrelevant. Your species is not what the hegemony expects to find. You are not primitive or stagnant or weak. You are something they have never encountered before. A species that grows stronger when threatened, more creative when constrained, more unified when attacked. Marcus had been tinkering with one of Zara 7's damaged components while they talked. It was a sensor array partly melted by weapons fire. As he worked, he noticed something odd about the damage pattern. Zara, he said slowly, what exactly happened to you? This damage? It's not from some accident. Someone was shooting at you specifically. She was quiet for a long moment. My reconnaissance mission was supposed to be secret. But the Hegemony High Command does not entirely trust artificial intelligence, even AI designed to serve them. They sent another agent to monitor my activities. Another robot like you? No, a biological agent. One of the client species that serves the hegemony. He was ordered to eliminate me if I showed signs of deviation from my programming. Marcus looked up from his work. And did you? Yes. The moment I began to question whether conquest was the only possible outcome for first contact with humanity. The agent interpreted my questions as malfunction and attempted to destroy me. I was forced to defend myself. Did you kill him? No, but I did ensure he could not complete his own mission. He is currently in stasis in a facility outside the city, alive but unable to report back to the hegemony. Marcus set down his tools. So right now your people think you're both dead? Correct. Which means I have time to complete my true mission. I thought your mission was reconnaissance when that was my original mission, but I have decided on a new one. Zara 7's eyes met his. I want to help humanity prepare for what is coming. The invasion fleet will arrive regardless of what I report, but if your species is ready for them, you think we can fight them? I think you can do something much more important than fight them, she said. I think you can surprise them. The hegemony has conquered 17 star systems because they always know exactly what to expect, but humanity is full of surprises. You just need time to prepare, and someone who understands how the hegemony thinks. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and terror. How long do we have? The fleet departed 3 months before I arrived. They are traveling at sublight speeds to avoid detection until the last moment. 18 months, perhaps 20. Less than 2 years to prepare Earth for an alien invasion. It seemed impossible, but as Marcus looked around his cluttered workshop, filled with machines he'd brought back from the dead using nothing but determination and spare parts, he began to think it might just be the kind of impossible that humans were good at. What do you need from me? He asked. Everything you can teach me about human ingenuity, she said, and help spreading the word to people who will listen. Your governments move slowly and your military thinks in conventional terms. But there are others, engineers, inventors, mechanics like yourself, who can adapt quickly to new challenges. Marcus nodded slowly. He thought about his network of contacts throughout the city, fellow mechanics and tinkerers who gathered at Murphy's bar every Friday night to trade stories and spare parts. People who could build anything from nothing, who saw opportunity in every broken machine. I know just where to start, he said. Murphy's bar hadn't changed in 15 years. The same neon beer signs flickered in the windows, the same sawdust covered the floor, and the same group of engineers, mechanics, and inventors gathered every Friday night in the back room. They called themselves the Fixers, people who made their living keeping the world running with duct tape, determination, and salvaged parts. Marcus had been coming here since he was 22, fresh out of technical school, and eager to learn from the veterans. Now he was one of the veterans himself, and tonight he needed their help more than ever. "You're telling us aliens are coming to invade Earth," said Rosa Martinez. Her weathered hands wrapped around a beer bottle. She ran the biggest salvage yard in the city and could identify any piece of technology by touch alone. "And you want us to help fight them with junk and good intentions? I'm telling you that in 18 months we're going to face an enemy with technology centuries ahead of ours," Marcus replied. "And the only advantage we have is that they think we're too primitive to be a threat." Jake Thompson, who designed custom electronics for off-world mining operations, laughed and shook his head. "Marcus, you've been working too many late nights. This sounds like something out of a bad science fiction movie." "Does it?" Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed them the photos he'd taken of Zara 7's components. "Tell me what you see." The room went quiet as the tablet passed from hand to hand. These people had been working with advanced technology their entire careers. They knew impossible when they saw it. "The power density on this thing is off the charts," whispered Elena Vasquez, who specialized in energy systems. "This power core is smaller than a dice cube, but it's putting out more energy than our fusion reactors." "And this joint assembly," added Chen Wu, examining the photos of Zara 7's arm mechanisms. "It's using some kind of programmable matter. The metal actually flows to accommodate movement. We're decades away from this kind of tech." Marcus looked around the room at their stunned faces. "Now imagine weapons built with the same technology. Ships that can repair themselves in flight. Armor that adapts to whatever you throw at it. That's what we're up against." "So we're screwed," said Jake flatly. "No," Marcus said. "We're challenged. There's a difference. These aliens, the hegemony, they've conquered 17 other star systems. You know how they do it? They study their targets, catalog their capabilities, then show up with exactly the right amount of force to win quickly and efficiently." "Sounds smart," Rosa admitted. "It is smart, but it's also predictable. They've never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than they could plan. They've never fought people who can build new solutions on the fly, who can turn their own advanced technology against them." Marcus pulled up another photo on his tablet. "This is what happens when human ingenuity meets alien technology." It showed the quantum communicator he'd been studying, but now it was partially disassembled. Its components spread across his workbench next to Earth-built electronics. "You're reverse engineering it," breathed Elena. "We're improving it," Marcus corrected. "The original design is efficient but inflexible. It only works with other hegemony devices. But if you modify the frequency generators with components from our communication satellites, you can make it compatible with our networks," finished Chen, understanding immediately. "Holy shit, Marcus. You're talking about building a communication system that could work across multiple star systems. That's just the beginning. We have 18 months to do what the hegemony thinks is impossible. Upgrade an entire planet's technology, using nothing but scrap and creativity." The room buzzed with conversation as the fixers began to grasp the scope of what Marcus was proposing. These were people who had spent their careers making the impossible work with insufficient resources. The challenge was enormous, but it was also exactly the kind of problem they lived to solve. "What do you need from us?" asked Rosa. "Everything. The hegemony is expecting to find a planet with primitive weapons, isolated communication networks, and no coordination between different groups. Instead, we're going to give them a world where every junkyard is a weapons factory, every mechanic is a combat engineer, and every broken-down machine is a potential surprise." Marcus pulled out a detailed map of the city. "Rosa, I need you to start identifying strategic materials in your salvage yard. Anything that could be used for weapons, communications, or defensive systems. Elena, we need to figure out how to build these power cores using Earth materials. Jake, you're our expert on off-world operations. We need to know how to set up manufacturing facilities that can't be detected from orbit." "What about the governments?" asked Chen. "Shouldn't we be talking to the military about this?" "We will eventually, but right now, they'd want proof we can't give them without exposing our source, and even if they believed us, they'd try to handle it through official channels. Committees, bureaucracy, environmental impact studies." Marcus shook his head. "We don't have time for proper procedures. We need to start building now and explain later." "This is insane," Jake muttered, but he was already pulling out his own tablet making notes. "I know a guy who runs a fabrication facility in orbit. Officially, they make solar panel components. Unofficially, They'll build anything you can pay for and they don't ask questions. I've got contacts in the asteroid mining operations, added Elena. They've been complaining about overproduction for years. Lots of rare metals just sitting in warehouses because there's no market for them. Rosa was already sketching on a napkin. My salvage yard sits on top of old subway tunnels. Been meaning to clear them out, but if we need hidden manufacturing space, Marcus felt a surge of hope. This was what made humans dangerous. The ability to turn problems into opportunities, to see potential in things others considered worthless. There's something else, he said. The person who brought me the damaged robot, she's still with me. She's the source of all this information and she wants to help. But she's not human. The room went quiet again. How not human are we talking? Rosa asked carefully. Artificial intelligence, built by the hegemony for reconnaissance, but she's decided to switch sides. Marcus met each of their eyes in turn. She knows everything about their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. But she's also a walking target. If the hegemony figures out she's alive and working with us, they'll send assassins. So we protect her, said Elena simply. If she's willing to help save our planet, the least we can do is keep her safe. It's not that simple. She's not just AI. She's more advanced than anything we've ever built. Some people might see her as a threat rather than an ally. Some people think vaccines cause autism and the Earth is flat, Rosa said dismissively. Doesn't mean we have to listen to them. If this AI wants to help us fight off an invasion, I say we give her all the support she needs. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of his friends, grease-stained, weathered, tired from long days of hard work, but now bright with excitement and determination. These weren't soldiers or politicians or scientists with advanced degrees. They were fixers, people who solve problems for a living, and they were about to take on the greatest problem in human history. All right, Marcus said. Let's build something amazing. Outside Murphy's bar, the city hummed with its usual Friday night energy. People going about their lives, unaware that in a back room filled with beer bottles and napkin sketches, a small group of mechanics had just declared war on an alien empire. The revolution would be built in garages and salvage yards, in orbital workshops and abandoned subway tunnels. It would be powered by human stubbornness and fueled by the simple refusal to accept defeat. The hegemony had conquered 17 star systems, but they had never faced Earth's greatest weapon, people who could fix anything. 6 months had passed since that first meeting at Murphy's bar, and the underground network had grown beyond Marcus's wildest expectations. What started as 6 people sharing beer and alien technology had evolved into a global movement of engineers, mechanics, and inventors working in secret to prepare Earth for war. The basement beneath Rosa's salvage yard had become their unofficial headquarters. The old subway tunnels stretched for miles beneath the city, providing perfect cover for their expanding operations. What once housed broken-down trains now hummed with 3D printers, fabrication units, and prototype weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Marcus walked through the main workshop, marveling at what they'd accomplished. In one corner, Elena's team was testing a new power core design based on hegemony technology, but built entirely from Earth materials. It was twice the size of the original, but produced 80% of the energy. Output, not bad for a first attempt using primitive components. Jake had established manufacturing, cells in 17 different locations across 4 continents. Each cell was small enough to avoid detection, but sophisticated enough to produce key components for their growing arsenal. His orbital contact had proven invaluable, providing access to materials that were impossible to obtain on Earth's surface. But the real breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Teenagers. Marcus, you need to see this, called Sarah Kim, a 19-year-old computer science student who had joined the network through her uncle Chen. She was standing beside a workbench covered with what looked like gaming equipment. What am I looking at? Marcus asked. Virtual reality training system, Sarah explained, putting on a sleek headset. Zara helped me program it with real hegemony combat scenarios. We can train thousands of people to fight alien technology without them ever seeing the actual hardware. Marcus watched as Sarah's avatar appeared on the monitor, moving through a realistic simulation of a hegemony ship's corridors. The level of detail was incredible. Every surface texture, every control interface, every potential hiding spot had been recreated from Zara's memories. How many people can we train with this? Theoretically, everyone with an internet connection. The basic training scenarios can run on any gaming system. The advanced modules need more processing power, but we've already got units deployed in gaming cafes and college computer labs across 6 continents. It was brilliant. While traditional military forces were still debating whether the threat was real, gamers around the world were already learning to fight aliens. They thought they were playing the latest VR combat game. In reality, they were becoming Earth's first line of defense. "Sarah's not the only one with good news," said a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Zara approaching, her appearance now almost entirely human thanks to synthetic skin developed by Elena's biotech contacts. She could walk through any city on Earth without drawing a second glance. "What do you have for me?" "Communication with the resistance movements on hegemony-controlled worlds," she said simply. Marcus stared at her. "There are resistance movements? On every world the hegemony has conquered, there are groups fighting for freedom. They have been isolated, unable to coordinate their efforts across star systems, but using the modified quantum communicators your teams have built." She led him to a communication station that looked like a bizarre hybrid of Earth and alien technology. Screens showed star maps with blinking indicators scattered across 17 different systems. "We've made contact with underground networks on Kepler 442b, Proxima Centauri b, and 3 other worlds. They're sharing intelligence about hegemony weaknesses, troop movements, supply lines. For the first time in centuries, the conquered worlds are talking to each other." Marcus felt a chill of excitement. They weren't just preparing Earth's defense anymore. They were building an interstellar rebellion. "There's more," Zara continued. "The resistance groups have been developing their own technologies, ways to fight hegemony forces using local materials and improvised weapons. Each world has contributed something unique to our shared knowledge base." She pulled up files on the screen showing weapon designs, sabotage techniques, and defensive strategies developed by dozens of different species across multiple star systems. It was like having access to the combined military experience of an entire galaxy. The beings on Tau Ceti E developed energy shields using crystalline structures that grow naturally on their world. The methane breathers from Wolf 359 created stealth technology that makes their ships invisible to hegemony sensors. The collective intelligence on Gliesa 667c figured out how to turn hegemony robots against their masters. Marcus studied the files, his mind racing. "How much of this can we adapt for Earth?" "Most of it with modifications. Your species' talent for reverse engineering and improvisation makes you uniquely suited to combining technologies from multiple sources. Rosa's team has already begun experimenting with the crystalline shield designs using Earth minerals." As if summoned by her name, Rosa appeared from behind a towering stack of salvaged components. Her hands were covered in some kind of glowing blue substance that pulsed with inner light. "Marcus, you've got to see this," she said, holding up what looked like a dinner plate made of crystallized light. "It's not as strong as the original Tau Ceti design, but it'll stop anything short of a direct hit from a plasma cannon. And we can grow them in any shape we need." She demonstrated by touching the crystal with a small tool. The plate flowed like liquid, reshaping itself into a curved shield that would fit perfectly on someone's arm. "How fast can we make them?" Marcus asked. "That's the beautiful part," Rosa grinned. "The crystals grow themselves. Set up the initial matrix, add raw materials, wait 3 days. We've got 17 growth chambers running right now, producing shields faster than we can figure out what to do with them." Marcus looked around the workshop with new eyes. What he saw was no longer just a hidden resistance base. It was the coordination center for a galactic uprising. In the past 6 months, they had gone from reverse engineering alien technology to building an interstellar network of rebels sharing weapons designs and tactical information. "Zara," he said, "what happens when the hegemony figures out what we're doing?" "They already know something is wrong," she replied. "Communication blackouts from multiple worlds, coordinated attacks on supply lines, new technologies appearing that they can't explain. The High Command is beginning to suspect that the conquered worlds are somehow coordinating their resistance efforts. Will they accelerate their timeline for Earth? Unlikely. The invasion fleet is already at maximum velocity. Changing course would require months of deceleration and re-acceleration, but they may send advanced scouts to investigate the communication disruptions." Marcus nodded. They had always known this day would come.
"How long do we have?"
6 months, perhaps 8, before the first scout ships arrive. 12 months before the main fleet. It sounded like a long time, but Marcus knew it wasn't nearly enough. Earth was transforming rapidly, but they were still playing catch-up with technology that had taken the hegemony centuries to develop. Then we need to accelerate our own timeline, he said. Jake, I want manufacturing cells operational on every continent within 60 days. Sarah, deploy the advanced training modules to every military base and engineering school on the planet. Rosa, we need to scale up crystal production by a factor of 10. He turned to address the entire workshop. People, we're no longer preparing for an invasion. We're preparing for the largest coordinated military action in galactic history. In 12 months, Earth doesn't just need to survive the hegemony fleet. We need to inspire every conquered world to rise up at the same moment. The workshop erupted in activity as teams scattered to their stations. Marcus watched them go, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 6 months ago, he had been a simple mechanic fixing broken machines. Now he was helping to coordinate a revolution that spanned multiple star systems. But as he looked at the determination on the faces around him, at the impossible technologies they were building with salvaged parts and stubborn creativity, he began to believe they might actually pull it off. The hegemony had conquered 17 worlds by understanding exactly what they were fighting. But they had never fought a species that could turn their own technology against them, that could build alliances across the galaxy, that could see opportunity in every broken machine and every discarded idea. They had never fought humans, and they had definitely never fought humans who had 18 months to prepare. The first hegemony scout ship appeared on Earth's detection grid at 3:47 hours on a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus was in the workshop when the alarm started blaring, the sound cutting through the usual hum of machinery and conversation. Contact, announced Jake's voice over the comm system. Single vessel, approximately destroyer class, just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the solar system. Marcus felt his stomach clench. They had known this moment was coming, had prepared for it, but somehow it still felt too soon. Around him, the workshop exploded into controlled chaos as everyone moved to their emergency stations. What's their approach vector? He asked, pulling up the tactical display. Direct line for Earth, replied Elena from the sensor station. No attempt at stealth or evasion. They're broadcasting on standard hegemony frequencies. What are they saying? Zara's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. Standard reconnaissance protocol. They're announcing themselves as an advanced survey vessel and demanding immediate response from planetary authorities. Marcus looked at the display showing the scout ship's position. It was still 8 hours away at current speed, giving them time to implement their carefully planned response. But this was no longer a drill or a simulation. This was first contact with a hostile alien species, and everything they had built over the past year was about to be tested. Jake, status report on our orbital assets, 37. Modified satellites in position around Earth. Each one looks like standard communication equipment, but they're armed with crystalline shield, generators, and improvised plasma weapons. The hegemony ship won't recognize them as threats until it's too late. Sarah, how many people do we have trained and ready? Over 2 million completed the advanced combat scenarios. Another 8 million finished basic training. That's not counting military personnel who've been using our systems for the past 6 months. Marcus nodded. The numbers were impressive, but he knew that training in virtual reality was very different from facing actual alien invaders. Still, it was better than anything Earth had ever managed before. Rosa, what's our manufacturing capacity looking like? We've got production facilities on every continent now. Last count was over 3,000 active cells, each one capable of producing weapons, shields, or communication equipment. Most of them look like legitimate businesses, machine shops, electronics manufacturers, even a few bakeries that are really cover operations. The beauty of their decentralized approach was becoming clear. Even if the hegemony scout ship detected some of their activities, it would be impossible to identify all of them. Earth looked like a primitive world with scattered technological capabilities, exactly what the hegemony expected to find. Zara, what should we expect from this first contact? The scout ship will attempt to establish communication with Earth's governments. When they respond, the hegemony will make demands for immediate surrender in exchange for protection from hostile forces. This is standard procedure. They prefer to take worlds without fighting when possible. And when Earth refuses, they will conduct detailed scans of our defensive capabilities, military installations, and population centers. Then they will return to the main fleet with recommendations for the conquest strategy. Marcus smiled grimly. What if Earth doesn't refuse? Zara was quiet for a moment. I do not understand. What if Earth's governments agree to surrender, but the surrender is incomplete? Understanding dawned in Zara's voice. You want to appear to capitulate while hiding your true capabilities. Exactly. Let them think they've won an easy victory. Meanwhile, we continue building our strength and coordinating with the resistance movements on other worlds. It was a dangerous game, but Marcus had spent the past year learning to think like the hegemony. They were efficient, methodical, and supremely confident in their superiority. That confidence could be used against them. Jake, I need you to contact every government on Earth. Tell them we need them to surrender. That's going to be a hard sell, Marcus. Tell them it's temporary, a delaying tactic to buy us more time, and remind them that if they don't surrender voluntarily, the hegemony will just take the planet by force and kill anyone who resists. While Jake worked on the diplomatic side, Marcus focused on the technical challenges. The scout ship would be scanning Earth with sensors far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. They needed to make sure those scans showed exactly what the hegemony expected to see: a primitive world with basic technology and no significant defenses. Elena, can we mask our energy signatures? Already working on it. The crystalline shields don't just stop weapons, they can also scatter sensor beams. We've got field generators positioned around all our major installations. To hegemony sensors, they'll look like natural mineral deposits. What about our satellites? Rose's people built stealth shells for all of them. They look like space junk from orbit. Old rocket parts, discarded equipment. The kind of debris any spacefaring civilization leaves behind. Marcus watched the tactical display as the scout ship continued its approach toward Earth. In 6 hours, humanity would face its first test against alien technology, but instead of feeling afraid, he found himself oddly excited. For the past year, they had been building weapons and training soldiers based on theoretical knowledge and simulations. Now they would finally see how their innovations performed against real hegemony equipment. Zara, I need you to stay out of sight during the initial contact. If that ship detects you, they will know their reconnaissance mission was compromised, she finished. I understand. I will monitor communications from the shielded areas. 3 hours later, Earth's major governments announced their surrender to the approaching alien vessel. The announcement was broadcast on every news network, along with footage of world leaders expressing their hope for peaceful coexistence with their new alien protectors. Marcus watched the reactions with grim satisfaction. Most of the population was terrified, but scattered throughout the crowds of frightened civilians were millions of people who knew the truth. Ex-gamers who had spent months training to fight aliens, engineers who had been secretly building weapons in their garages, ordinary citizens who had been quietly preparing for this exact moment. The scout ship entered Earth's atmosphere 2 hours after the surrender announcement, a sleek vessel that looked more like a work of art than a military craft. It landed in an open field outside Geneva, where representatives from the United Nations were waiting with white flags and peace offerings. Marcus watched the first contact proceedings through hacked satellite feeds. The alien commander was tall and elegant, with pale skin and oversized eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He accepted Earth's surrender with the bored efficiency of someone who had done this dozens of times before. This world will be incorporated into the hegemony sphere of protection. The commander announced through a translation device, your leaders will be given positions of authority under hegemony oversight. Your people will be relocated to designated population centers for their own safety. Resistance will be met with immediate termination. Standard conquest protocol, exactly as Zara had predicted. The commander was already broadcasting his report back to the main fleet, describing Earth as a compliant population with minimal defensive capabilities. But while the official surrender was taking place in Geneva, something else was happening in the shadows. Across the globe, hidden facilities were coming online. Orbital weapons were charging their power cores. Resistance cells were activating according to carefully rehearsed plans. And in 17 other star systems, alien populations who had been enslaved for generations received a single message, transmitted through the quantum communication network. Earth has fallen. Begin Operation Liberation. The message was followed by detailed technical specifications for every weapon, shield, and tactical innovation that Earth's engineers had developed over the past year. Within hours, resistance movements across the galaxy would have access to human ingenuity and creativity applied to the problem of fighting the hegemony. Marcus looked around the workshop at his team of mechanics and engineers, now wearing expressions of grim determination. In the distance, he could hear the sound of the alien scout ship taking off, returning to space with its report of an easy conquest. Phase 1 complete, he announced. The hegemony thinks Earth is secured. Now we show them what a secured Earth looks like when it's run by humans. On the tactical display, icons began appearing as hidden facilities revealed themselves. Thousands of them, scattered across every continent, each one representing months of careful preparation and human stubbornness. The scout ship pilot probably thought he was leaving behind a conquered world. Instead, he was returning to his fleet with news that would trigger the largest coordinated uprising in galactic history. Marcus smiled as he watched the ship disappear into the darkness between stars. The hegemony had conquered 17 worlds by knowing exactly what to expect from their enemies. They had no idea what to expect from Earth. 4 months after the scout ship's departure, the hegemony invasion fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 vessels strong, it was the largest military force ever assembled for a single conquest operation. The hegemony high command had decided that Earth's strategic location made it worth a significant investment in ships and troops. They expected to find a compliant population ready for immediate integration into their empire. Instead, they found something that would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Marcus stood in the primary command center, now located deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in a facility that had once been a mining operation. Around him, hundreds of screens showed tactical displays from across the solar system. Each screen represented months of careful preparation, human ingenuity, and the kind of stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had made humanity both frustrating and dangerous throughout its history. Fleet composition analysis complete, announced Jake from his station. 137 heavy cruisers, 48 destroyers, 12 dreadnoughts, and 3 command vessels. Total estimated crew, 1.4 million. That's a lot of aliens, muttered Rosa, her fingers dancing across controls that would have been incomprehensible to her a year ago. Good thing we've been busy. Marcus looked at his own tactical display showing Earth's defenses. To any outside observer, the planet still looked primitive and helpless. Cities bustled with normal activity. Communication networks carried routine traffic. Military bases operated on standard patrol schedules. But beneath the surface, Earth had been transformed into something unprecedented. A planet-sized trap designed by a species that had learned to turn scarcity into strength. Zara, what's the standard hegemony approach for a pacified world? Systematic occupation, she replied from her position at the communication console. They will establish control centers in major population areas, deploy garrison forces to maintain order, and begin resource extraction operations. The process typically takes 36 hours from arrival to complete planetary control, and they're expecting no resistance. Correct. The scout ship reported Earth as fully compliant with surrender terms. They will not be scanning for hidden weapons or defensive installations. Marcus smiled grimly. The hegemony's efficiency was about to become their greatest weakness. They had planned this operation based on the assumption that Earth was already conquered. They had not planned for Earth to fight back, and they certainly hadn't planned for Earth to fight back with technology reverse-engineered from their own equipment. Sarah, status on our training programs? 12 million people completed advanced combat scenarios. Every major city has at least 1,000 trained fighters who know hegemony ship layouts, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. They think they're playing the most realistic VR game ever created. What's the activation signal? 3 words broadcast on every communication channel simultaneously. Game mode activated. As soon as they hear that, they'll know this isn't a simulation anymore. Marcus nodded. It was an elegant solution to a complex problem. How do you train millions of people to fight aliens without causing mass panic? You tell them it's a game. How do you activate them all at once when the real fight begins? You use the same words they've been hearing in training for months. Elena, power grid status? All major cities are running on hegemony tech power cores hidden in their electrical systems. The aliens will see normal power consumption patterns, but we've actually got 5 times the energy capacity we need. Every hospital, school, and office building can be turned into a fortress at 5 minutes' notice. Jake, what's our manufacturing situation? Every machine shop, Electronics factory and fabrication facility on Earth is now equipped with hybrid technology. They can switch from making consumer goods to producing weapons faster than you can change TV channels. We've got distributed manufacturing capacity that exceeds anything the hegemony has ever seen. The invasion fleet began its final approach to Earth, ships spreading out in the standard occupation formation. Marcus watched them deploy with professional interest. It was textbook perfect. Exactly what you'd expect from a military force that had never faced serious resistance. Rosa, how are our orbital surprises looking? 17,000 objects in Earth orbit that look like space junk to their sensors. Each one is actually a weapons platform controlled by our quantum communication network. The moment we activate them, the hegemony fleet is going to find itself surrounded by weapons that can punch through their shields. What about the ground-based installations? Every major mountain range on Earth now has concealed missile sites built into the rock itself. They look like natural formations to orbital scans, but they can reach any ship in the atmosphere. Plus, we've got energy weapon arrays disguised as solar farms and communication towers. Marcus looked around the command center at faces that had become as familiar as family over the past year. These people had started as mechanics, engineers, and inventors. Now they were about to coordinate the defense of an entire planet using technology that shouldn't have existed for another century. Attention, all stations, he announced over the global communication network. Operation Human Surprise is now active. All units prepare for synchronized activation on my mark. Across the solar system, millions of people received the signal and began moving to their assigned positions. Gamers logged into what they thought were emergency training scenarios. Engineers activated hidden weapon systems in their workshops. Orbital workers powered up satellites that had been disguised as space debris. The hegemony fleet reached Earth orbit and began deploying landing craft toward major population centers. The operation was proceeding exactly according to their careful plans, until Marcus gave the activation signal. All units, all stations, all personnel, he said calmly into his microphone. Game mode activated. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every screen in the command center lit up with activation confirmations as Earth's hidden defenses came online. Orbital weapons revealed themselves by the thousands. Ground-based installations emerged from concealment. In cities around the world, trained civilians took positions they had practiced 100 times in virtual reality. The hegemony fleet's first indication that something was wrong came when their landing craft started exploding. Weapons that shouldn't have existed were firing from positions that their scans had shown were empty. Ships that had been invisible suddenly became active threats, attacking with tactics and technology that looked disturbingly familiar. "Sir," came a panicked voice over the intercepted hegemony communications. "The humans are using our own weapons against us." "How is that possible?" "Impossible," replied the fleet commander. "Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. They couldn't have reverse-engineered it in the time since first contact. Sir, I'm showing energy signatures that match hegemony power cores throughout their major cities. And their orbital defenses, they're using crystalline matrix shields." Marcus listened to the confusion in the alien voices with grim satisfaction. The hegemony had spent centuries conquering primitive worlds that fought with inferior technology. They had never faced an enemy that could steal their advantages and improve upon them. Phase 2, all units, Marcus announced. Transmit liberation protocols to all resistance networks. Across 17 star systems, populations that had been enslaved for generations received detailed instructions for coordinated uprisings. Not only did they have plans for attacking hegemony installations, they had blueprints for building Earth-designed weapons using locally available materials. The effect was immediate. Within hours, every hegemony-controlled world was experiencing simultaneous rebellions. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks were compromised. Garrison forces found themselves under attack by insurgents armed with impossible weapons and fighting with Earth-trained tactics. Fleet, commander to high command, came a desperate transmission from the lead hegemony vessel. "We need immediate reinforcement. Earth was not a primitive world. Repeat, Earth was not a primitive world. We are facing coordinated resistance across all occupied territories. High command to fleet commander. Clarify your situation report. Earth surrendered 4 months ago. Earth surrendered as a deception. They used the time to prepare defenses and coordinate with resistance movements throughout our territory. We are not fighting one world. We are fighting a galactic uprising. Marcus smiled as he listened to the alien confusion. The hegemony had built their empire on the foundation of superior technology and careful planning. But they had never faced an enemy that could outthink them, outbuild them, and turn their own strengths into weaknesses. "Sir," called Elena from her station, "I'm getting reports from resistance movements on 12 different worlds. They're successfully implementing our weapon designs and tactical doctrines. The hegemony forces are falling back to defensive positions across multiple systems. What about their reinforcement capabilities? According to Zara's intelligence, they don't have any. This fleet represents 60% of their total military capacity. The remaining 40% is scattered across 17 systems trying to deal with Simu." 1 year after the liberation of Earth, Marcus stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching the ruins of the former hegemony capital world drift past in the darkness. The planet below had once been the center of an empire spanning 17 star systems. Now it was a monument to the dangers of underestimating human ingenuity. The war had lasted only 8 months from first contact to final victory, but it had changed everything, not just for humanity, but for every species in the galaxy that had ever looked at the stars and wondered if they were alone. "Hard to believe it's really over," said Rosa, joining him at the observation window. She wore the uniform of the newly formed Galactic Liberation Fleet, her mechanic's coveralls traded for the insignia of a chief engineering officer. "When this started, we were just trying to fix a broken robot." Marcus smiled at the memory. Zara had long since chosen to remain on Earth, serving as humanity's first ambassador to the dozens of newly liberated worlds. Her decision to help humanity had sparked a revolution in artificial intelligence rights that was still spreading across the galaxy. "Status report from the ground teams?" he asked. "All hegemony control centers have been neutralized," Rosa replied. "The local population is free to establish their own government. Jake's people are setting up communication links with the other liberated worlds so they can coordinate rebuilding efforts." It had been the same story on every former hegemony world they'd visited. The empire had collapsed so quickly that most populations were still adjusting to the idea of freedom. Centuries of occupation had left many species unsure how to govern themselves, but they were learning fast with help from Earth's advisors. What about resistance from former hegemony loyalists? Minimal. Turns out most of their military leaders were more interested in saving their own lives than fighting a losing war. The few who refused surrender are being dealt with by local liberation forces. Marcus nodded. The hegemony's greatest weakness had been their belief in their own superiority. When that belief was shattered by humanity's impossible victory, their entire social structure had crumbled. An empire built on the assumption of invincibility couldn't survive even a single defeat. "Sir," came a voice from behind them. Marcus turned to see Sarah Kim, now wearing the stripes of a fleet communications officer. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Chen." Marcus followed Sarah to the communications center, where a holographic display showed Chen Wu, the former electronics specialist who now commanded Earth's home defense fleet. His weathered face was split by a huge grin. "Marcus, you need to see this," Chen said without preamble. "We just received a message from the far side of the galaxy. A species called the Andromedans. They've been monitoring our conflict with the hegemony, and they want to establish diplomatic relations." "How far out are we talking?" 2 million light years. Apparently, news of our victory has been spreading through quantum communication networks we didn't even know existed. The whole galaxy is talking about the species that defeated the hegemony, using salvaged parts and stubborn determination. Marcus felt a familiar chill of excitement, the same feeling he'd had when he first saw Zara's damaged components in his workshop, the sense that he was looking at something that would change everything. What do they want? Cultural exchange, trade agreements, shared technology development. And Marcus, they're not the only ones. We've got first contact requests from 47 different species across 12 galaxies. Everyone wants to meet the humans who turned an alien invasion into a galactic liberation movement. Rosa whistled softly. From fixing broken toasters to galactic diplomacy in 2 years. That's got to be some kind of record. "There's more," Chen continued. "The engineering teams have been analyzing hegemony technology with help from our new allies. We're looking at advances in everything from medicine to interstellar travel. Jake thinks we can have sustainable colonies in other galaxies within a decade." Marcus thought about Jake Thompson, the skeptical engineer who had laughed at the idea of alien invasion. Now he was designing starships that could cross intergalactic distances and establishing human settlements on worlds that didn't even orbit stars. What about Earth itself? Marcus asked, thriving. The underground manufacturing network has been converted to peaceful production. Rosa's crystal technology is revolutionizing everything from construction to computing. Elena's power cores are providing clean energy to every city on the planet. And Sarah's training programs are being adapted for education and entertainment. It was remarkable how smoothly the transition had gone. The same people who had built weapons in hidden workshops were now building a better future, using the same technologies. The skills that had saved humanity from conquest were now helping to rebuild civilization. "Sir," interrupted another communications officer, "priority message from the Kepler system. The former hegemony research facility is requesting immediate assistance with a technical problem." Marcus exchanged glances with Rosa. The Kepler facility had been one of the hegemony's primary technology development centers, containing centuries of accumulated knowledge from conquered species. Since liberation, it had become a hub for collaborative research between dozens of former enemy species. What kind of technical problem? They've discovered something in the deep archives. Technology that predates the hegemony by thousands of years. It appears to be some kind of gateway system, but they can't figure out how to activate it safely. Marcus felt that familiar spark of curiosity that had driven him to fix broken machines since childhood. Here was another puzzle, another impossible challenge that everyone else had given up on. "Rosa," he said, "how long would it take to get to Kepler? With our new drive systems? 6 hours. Then let's go fix something." As their ship changed course toward the Kepler system, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that night in his repair shop. He had started as a simple mechanic who couldn't turn away from a broken machine. Now he was part of a galactic civilization that was just beginning to discover its potential. The hegemony had conquered 17 worlds by assuming that primitive species would always remain primitive, that superior technology was the only thing that mattered in conflict. They had never encountered a species that could adapt, improvise, and overcome any obstacle through sheer determination and creativity. But more than that, they had never encountered a species that could see potential in broken things, that could look at a damaged alien robot and see not scrap metal, but an opportunity for friendship, that could take the tools of oppression and transform them into instruments of liberation. "You know what the best part is?" Rosa said, watching the stars streak past as they entered faster than light travel. "What's that?" "Somewhere out there are probably more broken machines that need fixing, more impossible problems that everyone else has given up on, more chances to turn the galaxy upside down with nothing but spare parts and human stubbornness." Marcus smiled, already thinking about the mysterious gateway technology waiting for them at Kepler. Another puzzle to solve, another chance to prove that there was no such thing as irreparable damage when you had the right tools and the determination to use them. He had been just a mechanic, working in a cramped repair shop on the edge of New Chicago. But the robot he had fixed had indeed changed everything, not just for Earth, but for an entire galaxy that was now free to discover what was possible when different species worked together instead of conquering each other. And in the end, that might have been the most human thing of all, taking something that was broken and making it better than it had ever been before.